Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this first Breathable Cities Conversation Cafe. We're very happy because this is going to be the first of three conversation cafes that we're going to have regarding the topics that came up during the live events, and that we are going to we have found amazing experts that have experience in these topics that are going to be building interinstitutional cooperation, empowering the youth, and about gender perspective in air quality projects. Today, we're going to have the first conversation cafe, which is actually a conversation to see how the humans feel, experience joy and pain, and learn through their processes, to understand the soft side of our projects, and how in this case, interinstitutional cooperation is not only a thing about writing papers and putting stamps on the papers. It's about will, and it's about the spirit of cooperation. And we are going to also understand that learning can happen from failure. And we're going to see the human experience from the expert today. She's an amazing a professional, and that it's going to help us to connect with the real possibilities of, in this case, building interinstitutional cooperation. So today we have Ivana del Río. She's a technical secretary for ICLEI Mexico, Central America and the Caribbean. She has a business administration in international relations and political science, and she's member of the Research and Innovation Working Group of the Global Covenant of Majors for Climate and Energy. She promotes sustainable policy at the local level among politicians, technicians, and networks. She also leads projects development in different stages, from design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. She has expertise in areas including paradiplomacy, multi-level action, climate regime, environmental governance, and biodiversity. And she's a skilled relationship builder with experience managing contracts for KfW, NDC partnership, and other government and private clients. So welcome, Ivana. Thank you very much for the time you're giving us. And we can start by you telling us about yourself, about your experience, and your experience with international interinstitutional cooperation. Welcome, Ivana.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Just
Yes.
making sound test. Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad I'm here. Thank you for this opportunity and for considering me and ICLEI for being technical advisors to this amazing project. I think you made a very well resume of my experience. I work with local governments, but in the road to work with local governments, you must also interact with other kind of institutions and organizations, as local networks, other ONGs, different climate and environmental organizations. I also work with several clients for the development of projects. Recently, we've worked with KfW, which is the development bank of Germany, and we've also worked with NDC partnership. I've also have a lot of experience working with the academic field and with the private sector too. So I think this would be a very good experience for sharing my interaction with several actors and how can we make this work and build an interinstitutional cooperation framework.
Thank you, Ivana. So let us know about your experience. What do you think is essential for building a structure for interinstitutional cooperation? Is there a specific protocol you recommend, or some things that you consider are essential to do this?
Yeah, well, first of all, I do think that there are some specific characteristics that one must take into, consideration, but especially on environmental issues, that some of those take into account public goods, like it may be climate change or air quality. I think it's very difficult to reach an agreement and to build cooperation due to collective action issues. That it's a thing that I would like to comment more about, because that is actually the approach I use to understand climate change. But it's also difficult because of conflicts of interest and a lack of a multidisciplinary approach. that I'm also sure we'll have time to comment on that. But as much institutional cooperation based on partnership to address a public good should take some of these points into consideration. And I think it's a firm commitment and a firm political will, because environmental issues take a lot of responsibility and a lot of time to get solved. For climate change, we've been working on it for the last 30 years. So it is a very important thing to consider, a firm institutional commitment and a firm political will. I think it also should take into consideration and a strategic planning framework and a comprehensive agenda of the both organizations that are going to be involved. They should really take into account all the activities they must get involved in the future ahead. And I also think that for environmental complex projects that should be taken into considerations that the results may not be tangible at some times, at some occasions, and that you must focus on improving or in generating a program or a public policy, and that the results should not be measured only in quantitative terms, but also in institutional capacities, or in building knowledge, or in qualitative results. I think those are very important things that should be taken into account for a protocol for building an interinstitutional relationship for environmental or public policy related to the environment. The most important thing that every project must respond to a specific particular situation, and that's why I think it's excellent that you're taking the time to interview technical experts to gain recommendations, and those adapt them to this project that is Breathable Cities, because every activity development has an endogenous character, and therefore we cannot use cooperation models to replicate those. We should always listen, and I also advocate for the share of good practices, but we cannot use cooperation models and scheme as an exportation schemes, because they should always be adapted to the specific project you are considering. So any environmental field requires an in-depth reformulation of the existing solutions to adapt them to the specific real problems of the local society. So that's why I really appreciate the efforts you're doing for these cases in India and in Mexico. These are excellent. It is an excellent solution and an excellent framework to start and go ahead with the design of actions.
Thank you, Ivana. You're talking about we have to take into consideration that some, not necessarily to replicate cooperation schemes. What about establishing collaboration conventions? Is it effective to establish collaboration conventions like memorandums of understanding between the different parties or stakeholders, government offices in this case, or what else could there be?
Yes, I think MOUs are a great resource to take into consideration. For example, ICLEI uses them a lot. ICLEI promotes it to formalize a cooperation relationship with another organization. And I think that a very attractive feature of these MOUs is that it is a non-legally binding document that you can create prior to entering a contract. So that way you can establish in advance terms and responsibilities, and also the basic intention between the parties to create a business relationship or a cooperation relationship. And I think that some of the benefits that MOUs have, and that I have been witness of as being part of MOUs between different organizations, is that it establishes an intention. It is a paramount for both parties to understand goals, objectives, expectations, and requirements that they are going to face in this relationship. ahead, I think it also reduces the risk of uncertainty. You know, when you set in advance clear prospects of ambitions, I think future negotiations can avoid disagreements between the parties. And I also think that it provides a network for future negotiations. Once that you have a signed MOU, you can go ahead with the contract. And I think it's easier because you have now established a relationship of trust between the organizations. And it is also a reminder of the objectives and intentions of the parties. So I think it is a very effective way to establish a cooperation mechanism between parties.
So let me see if I am understanding well your proposed, I mean, MOUs and these type of conventions uh, reduce the risk of having conflicts with other parties or with other stakeholders. Um, this is a very intricate topic because most of the times there are conflicts between some institutions that should be collaborating together. For example, the environment office with urban development office and different offices that work on the same city that could cooperate. How do you overcome these conflicts? Which are the most common conflicts that you have found in your experience, and how do you overcome them?
Yeah, this is a very difficult and interesting question because conflicts may arise from any situation that can be given up. But I think that conflicts can be divided into different groups. On the first hand, you have task interdependencies, conflicts that can generate between the individuals or the groups working on a project, because the most tasks they have together, they have interdependence on this task, well, the greater they will have to work together, and therefore the greater the conflict may arise. So I think that the greater the likelihood of the conflict in different expectations among entities is higher, because interdependence makes avoiding the conflict more difficult. So I think that for this, the main solution I would propose is periodic communication, and also the promotion of teamwork. Because, as you mentioned, many entities in a city or in an organization, many departments will have to work together to the development of a public policy or of a program. So they must be clear on which task each department or each entity will make, but they should also cooperate between each other. Another problem that may arise may come from institutional inconsistencies. And I think that it is likely to get inconsistencies between the parties involved, because you may, depending on the project, it may be the case that you could have the probability to work with another organization that have institutional inconsistencies with you, and they may have another mission or vision or another work field or methodology, and that may increase that may arise conflict, and may increase the tensions between the both parties in work. So I think that you should go ahead and work with organizations that have these work framework similar as you, so that this could facilitate comprehension and collaboration between the parties involved. Another aspect that can rise, conflict and competition is the dependence on common resource pool, and this is very common between organizations, because every institution and every organization is in search of finance and economic resources. So this may be a very sensitive issue between the organizations. So to avoid conflict, I really just recommend to avoid competition and avoid zero-sum games, and instead join efforts to obtain these monetary funding and sources that they need for project implementation, because this may be very common, and we've been there the finance aspect can really raise tensions between parties. And finally, I think that also may raise tension is the lack of common performance standards. Um, Performance criteria can be very different between institutions. So if collaboration is expected, the managers of the project or of the program of the organizations should value all the activities that both parties are developing, and explore criteria of improvement, because um, every organization has a different work scheme, and they must adapt to collaborate between them. I think that I would sum up this conflict arisement between institutions, between interinstitutional cooperation in these four areas, I think.
Thank you very much, Ivana. That was very interesting. Regarding this, Sugadarsini from India is asking that sometimes it's not possible to do MOUs when executing projects. So how do you negotiate in those cases when a project is already happening and you need cooperation from other government offices?
Yeah, I think that it's very hard. You should just go ahead and take it step by step, task by task, because you do not have either a non-legally binding or a legally binding document that can track these officially record cooperation deal that you've made. So I think that the most important thing is to take task by task, step by step, and once that you have the results from task zero, go ahead, and because you've now established and made this trust wall between the both parties. So my recommendation would be to take it step by step, task by task, and do not compromise or do not make a deal, even if it's not formal. Just as soon as you finish and as soon as you've delivered task zero, and if you've had a good results, if the expectations were accomplished, then you now have this trust wall to go ahead and go ahead with task one. But I do think that negotiation schemes are very different. You cannot always take into account an MOU. So I think you should always take little steps between partners, build trust in the first place, see that you understand each other, see that you can have this negotiation and work relationship, and do not get involved if you're not having an MOU or a document that records this kind of trust and engagement for future projects. Just take task by task and see how this develops. I know it's a very uncertain question and a very uncertain answer that I'm providing, but if you do not have this document that can track responsibility for a future period, I think the most appropriate thing is to just go on by step on building trust and building negotiation and seeing how the expectations of this work relationship is going, so that you could go on and build from that.
This is great because you're saying the task interdependency conflicts can be alleviated by periodic communication, team building, and clarity in task division. How do you build trust in your experience? How do you build trust with between different offices or government office with different purposes? Like, for example, when you're talking about transportation, urban and local bodies, or when you're talking about public development, or all these different offices, in your experience, what has worked to build trust, to build this communication, to improve these, even if there is not a project, to have offices, government offices getting along well?
Yeah, I think my answer will be very cliche, but I think the most important question, the most important aspect always for building trust is communication. A lot of communication between the partners and the organizations. Take, for example, I don't know, ICLEI comes to my mind. Before getting an MOU, a collaboration, even with or without an MOU, we have several calls between the organizations, between the staff of the organizations, and we have several calls just to talk about what does your organization do, what do you work on, what are your interested areas of work, what are your common projects, what are your recent public policies that you work on, who are your allies, and I think that trust only is gained once that you also open up to trust another. So I think communication is key for making any type of cooperation scheme. For if you want to build a partnership relation, you should always be engaged to have an active communication, because that way you're going to see if the other partner, if the other part is going to suit your expectations, and if it's going to suit what you're aiming to develop. And I also think that besides communication, you should also have an open-minded and extend trust in order for you to gain trust too.
Wow, it's not a cliche. I think it's also very important to have
Yeah.
communication between stakeholders. It's communication is essential. I'm thinking probably that social communication departments in each of the secretaries or offices should be working on a more inspiring way of communicating the actions of the office or the secretary or the ministry. In this case, when you have this communication happening or things like that, sometimes you face other type of conflicts or other type of projects talking about conflicting interests regarding business associations or the interest, for example, business associations between the interest of the environment department, because we want to take care of the environment, but business associations still want to produce their services and products the way they do. And it's difficult for them to communicate and create agreements. How do you think we could tackle that situation?
Yes, conflicts of interests are very common in any business partnership, and they especially come in advance in environmental issues, because you know you have the environmentalists that want to take care of a public good like air quality, but you also have maybe the enterprises that do not get along with the project because of financial issues. So addressing environmental issues unfortunately has prompted to cause conflicts of interest, and this has been a very common thing in environmental issues. I think that maybe just as an example of how bigger the problem can get between conflicts of interest, you have the Montreal Protocol and the Kyoto Protocol that work really well and have made excellent advances for the ozone. And then we have the Kyoto Protocol, which practically failed in order to reduce mitigation. So one work because of long story short, what worked for these two protocols is that they have different self-interested judgment, different payoff structures, and different cost benefits of the United States. So this pretty much resulted on how two different international treaties didn't work because of conflicts of interest from one of the parties. So this is a bigger picture, but to narrow this, how can we solve conflicts of interest in cooperation cases between organizations and in project management especially? I think that there are also some points to take into consideration. that we should always identify in advance possible risks between the institutional relationship. I think we should also agree on forms of acceptable behavior, what is going to be tolerable, what is not going to be. I think we should also raise awareness of the circumstances in which conflicts can arise. Also describe how your organizations defines a potential conflict of interest, because one organization may not have the same definition of a conflict of interest than another. So you should always emphasize and put in the shoes of the another organization, in order to see what do they consider as a conflict and how this may be solved. I think you should also outline your organization's procedure for handling, addressing, recording, and solving conflicts of interest. I also think that you should ensure effective procedures to solve conflicts of interest in different situations. And also, very important to construct capacities to prevent conflicts of interest through training. Yeah.
So we understand that it is essential to start building capacities on the soft side, on the soft skills, right? Interpersonal skills and how to organize groups of people. That's actually very, very important. We have another question in the chat. It says, in government procedures, we communicate in official letters or meeting personally on requirements. What is the strong way you'd recommend and how we can better communicate?
Yes, that is a very important question too, because I'm also sure that we were going to talk about this on how can we follow up on tasks in an efficient way. And I'm also very familiar with these official letters in ICLEI. We use them all the time. To make things official, you must communicate to institutional channels, which is the institutional email and through official letters. But sometimes this is not the most efficient way to have an answer. Every organizations receive thousands of emails every day. Actually, in ICLEI, we have experienced this a lot. Sometimes we send the official communication. We send this letter, but we also send, if we have the contact through a WhatsApp, we send them just a text, because I think that's an easier and effective way. People are always more used to check their texts, that answering emails that may take more time. So I think that you must be creative, and always use the official channels of communication, because I think that's the official record that you're doing your work. But you also can be creative and use another communication channels, because following up on task, I think it is an obvious task, but I think that it is also a task that we do not make day to day, because of the difficult of following up on the activities, because sometimes you send emails and you do not have an answer, so you think that you may be insisting on something and you're not seeing the immediate results. So I think it's very difficult to follow up on task, but I think you can always make it easy, communicate just the updates, use another creative channels if you have those, a call, a WhatsApp text, even through social media. You can also get into communications by Facebook or Twitter. We always use them too. If we're not having a straight back answer by the official institutional email, we also use those. I think you can also try these creative methods. Instead of we have enough emails, you can also pick the phone, you can go to someone's desk and check on how they're doing. You can always arrange a meeting, and I think that also it is easier to follow up on task if you have anticipated the next steps. If you are working on something in a current activity, if you imagine in advance the further steps, then it will be easier to follow up on task and to supervise any follow-up. So yeah, I've been there. I've suffered a lot from not having straight answers from official communication channels, and I that is why I always encourage you to use creative um, mechanisms of communication.
That's very interesting. I think in the end, it all reduces a little bit to, I mean, it's not that simple, but having project management skills and project management structures will reduce the possibilities of conflict and the possibilities of miscommunication, right? It's important to have that. These questions have been very interesting, and I think they have shared a lot of perspectives, right, to what we need to start building with other government offices. We usually tend to do the classical way of making oficios, you know, the papers, big papers with stamps, and sending them to the other offices, and then wait a few months for the response, and that makes everything kind of slow. I think, and I like the way you said it, we have to create an inspiring vision so that other offices want to join and want to cooperate with you, or at least are open to cooperate whenever you get close to them. So that has been very, very interesting. So we're moving towards the end of the session, and I would like to see if someone from the audience in India or in Mexico have any questions that they would like to I mean, if they want to open their microphones and ask some questions to Ivana, or to say something about what you just heard in your experiences too. We also have some people from Europe in the session. So is there someone who wants to share something or ask a question to Ivana? Jivan, hi.
Yeah, hi. Hi. Now, Ivana, you said well about everything, but then in government of India, particularly when we have a federal system, the state functions under the chief executive of chief minister of the state, and then the central government works under the directive of prime minister there. We have ministries and secretaries and all that. State has got all the system. At times, the email mode of communication and response doesn't work in the case of financial commitments. So that is, you said well, that it will slow down the process, but then at times people are helpless. They always seek a written communication in a file approved by the authority and come back, then only the office orders are communicated for execution. So that is being the system in India. We have not yet changed to that very dynamic system as yet, because that may not be full believable because of cyber crime and cyber manipulation, all those things. So we are still, the financial part is governed by the documentation. The other communication goes by the emails.
I'm sorry, I think I have some trouble audio. I don't know if you experience it too, but just please confirm if the question is also related to communication in this communication in this vertical scheme of authorities from local governments to the national government. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, that communication.
Perfect.
So we have to work with both. We have to work with both, Ivana. Email communication for execution and financial commitments through documentation.
Yes, I think you are facing a very important challenge that also another cities around the world are facing too, and it relates to having to work multi-level approach where local governments work with subnational governments and also the national government. Many communication trouble may arise, and also in the development of activities, not only in communication, in activities management, in institutional frameworks. But I think that promoting and taking into consideration this type of approach, the multi-level approach, is a great participation in governance schemes and in project management, because it promotes accountability, brings decision-making close to the ones involved, and especially in environmental issues, having the three perspectives of the three different political orders makes it very narrowed down. It narrows down the solutions that can be very practical to the societies in need. So I think that you are going in a very good road through to solving air quality problems when you are working aiming to involve national governments and the national government into your policies. And it's a tragedy to hear that you're facing communication problems with the national government and other levels of government and maybe another institutions. But I think that, again, my advice would be to try creative methods of communication, anticipate that late response may arise and how can you solve this. So you could always take into consideration the next steps so that you go ahead the response, and try to make this easy way to communicate to the other partners involved.
Thank you very much, Ivana, for that response. I think it's very important. This question has solved many questions that the people have, because this communication between at different levels of the government, it's always challenging in our countries, and it is important to find ways to flexibilize. I think make it more flexible and make it more adaptable. In that sense, the communication. We also have Suba Darsini who wants to make a question. Suba Darsini, go on.
Hi, Ivana. You have explained very beautifully about the communication and other things. I also got little bit ideas to my questions and answers, which I am going to put before you. It is a practical problem that we are facing. I am working in State Pollution Control Board. So the main priority and main work of our department is pollution control. But in different projects and in different works, we need cooperation and help from different departments like urban local bodies like municipalities, transport department, development authorities. Without their cooperation help, we cannot execute many projects or many assignments. And my question is that pollution control is our priority, our departmental priority, and it's a priority work. Our focus is on pollution control, but it is not the priority of transport department because they have different assignments. Similarly, municipalities, they have different assignments. In those cases, how can we influence them to give prioritize to our work? Because without them, we are not going to complete our work. Anyhow, we have to depend on them. Maybe some data or maybe some projects they have done, which will input to our projects, or like manpower. In certain cases, we need their help in respect of manpower, which their people can do, we cannot do. But thing is that they don't give priority, what I explained you. So how to create interest in them that see, this is also a work you have to work, or you have to cooperate. How to build that interest or prioritize in their activity and in their department?
Yes, thank you so much for your question. I think many departments have also been in your position that they cannot get to cooperate with other departments and with other members of their staff. I think that nowadays every institution or organization, for most of its activities management in a program operation, most intervene directly or indirectly with other departments, and it is a possibility that they do not have the same level of engagement or the same level of commitment. So I think that there are many different ideas and ways for them to get involved and gain some responsibility and teamwork for developing and work ideas. And I think, first of all, you must emphasize that the organization has wide goals and effectiveness. If you focus organization project with wide goals and objectives, this should prevent conflict. You know, if larger goals are emphasized, employees will be more likely to see the bigger picture of the project, and that this will be easier for them to achieve corporate goals together. If you have this wide picture of the project, you can see that transportation department can also have benefits as well as, you know, the environmental department. I think that also providing well structured tasks may help. When activities are clear, defined, and understood by staff and departments, conflict is also less likely to occur, because conflict arises when the tasks are uncertain, and these will minimize the ambiguity and will make the structure of the activities in the project very well defined, and this can be developed in an easier way. I think also an aspect that we have talked about it in different occasions is facilitating intergroup communication. When you have misperception of the abilities and motivations of each department, this can lead to conflict. So I think that efforts to increase the dialogue between the groups to share information about the project can also eliminate conflict. You know, as groups as groups and as departments come into communication to share each goals and capacities, this can diminish the intergroups conflicts, and these can also increase teamwork. And also, I think that the most important thing is to avoid win-lose situations between departments, because these can also generate conflict when, you know, resources scarce, when management is being conflicted between two departments. This can create organizational tensions. So I think that rewards that can be given through contributions to overall corporate objects will foster a climate where groups seek solutions that are acceptable for all.
Thank you very much for that response and for the questions, Subarsini and Jivan. And we have reached the end of the session. We know that you have to go to another call soon, but we thank you very much for this time that you have given us. We just want to know if there's something else you want to say or something that you consider important to share with us, or else we are going to anyway upload the recording into the breathablecity.live platform so you can check it later. Ivana, any last words?
Yeah, I just wanted to give just a few shout out to this approach that I really think it's very suitable for attending environmental projects, which is collective action. And there are collective action challenges that can face difficulties to address issues as climate change or as air quality. And I think that most of the challenges that collective action may cause is that there's scientific uncertainty that may make policy makers hesitant to act, and also the subjective nature of the environmental problem solutions can never be right to all, but just acceptable to certain group of people, and that also environmental problems are transboundary in character, which means that they require interinstitutional and international cooperation. Also that the system to solve environmental problems tends to breed competition rather than cooperation. And you know that environmental issues tend to spill into different areas of human activity that make it easier that makes it difficult to coordinate action. So I really suggest that you take into consideration the collective action scheme to try to solve this air quality problem. But overall, I really appreciate you taking my advices and my technical guidance into consideration. I think this is a great project, and the fact that you're listening to several experts, gaining advice, sharing good practices, I think it is great, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Ivana, and thank you everybody for joining to this first conversation cafe for Breathable Cities. And we are going to have a next conversation cafe with John Beinerth on education and empowering the youth, also for equality, and a gender perspective one later on. So we will confirm through all these following sessions through breathablecitieslive. Again, Ivana, thank you very much, and have a great day, everybody.
If
Yes?
I can be of any further assistance by email, you have my contact, and I'll be glad to stay in touch and see the development of the project. Thank you so much.
Sure, Ivana. Thank you very much. Jivan?
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye,
Bye.
everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ivana. Gracias.